sharks have ruled the ocean for over 400 million years. But how much do we actually know about them?
We know more about the surface of Mars than we do our own deep ocean.
How do sharks navigate through the vast open ocean with no maps, no landmarks, and no GPS?
Is that we think sharks may use their electro-sensory system to navigate.
And the big question everyone asks, do sharks really eat humans?
It's sort of that lock and key mechanism of dietary preferences, and humans, we're just not really on that menu.
Today, we're cutting through the myths and the fear to uncover the truth about sharks.
Having sharks in our ocean is really critical, and it does help us have a healthy, functioning system.
Our guest has spent more than 20 years on the front lines of shark research and ocean conservation, leading over 40 undersea expeditions around the world. Her work is helping reshape how the world sees these misunderstood predators. This is Where the Ocean Meets Mikki McComb-Kobza.
Where the Ocean Meets.
Hi, Mikki. Thank you so much for being here today.
Yes, so thank you so much for the opportunity. It's great to be here.
Absolutely. And to set the context for today, I think there's by now, probably at least in the audience of people that listen to this knowledge that sharks are not that dangerous as Jaws always said they are. There's more people that are killed by falling refrigerators and all that. We've all heard these things before. I, for myself, love the ocean, but I'm still scared of the sharks. I think they don't have the best PR department in the world. So I want to use this conversation to maybe fall a bit more in love with sharks and draw from some of your fascination, and walk out of this conversation and say, man, I love sharks. That's my goal for the for the call.
That's great.
Yeah, and I thought maybe to start off light, there's a few myths that go around in my head, things that I heard at one point about sharks. Maybe we can play a quick game of true or false. I'm just going to tell you what I heard and you tell me whether or not this is true or not.
True or false?
So the first thing I heard was that some sharks actually lay eggs and some give birth like mammals.
Yes, so that is true. So sharks have diverse reproductive modes and developmental modes. And so sharks do lay eggs, some of them, and some of them have eggs on the inside that are retained, and then they give birth through those eggs on the inside of the mother. And then there are a whole diverse spectrum of other reproductive modes where females retain the embryos on the inside and give birth to live young. And it really is a fascinating story to look at all of those different developmental modes. And some of those include analogs almost to what we see in mammals, the placenta, the umbilical cord, the direct nutrition to embryos on the inside from the mother's system. So sharks have really developed ways to ensure the survival of their offspring in very unique and adaptive ways.
Okay, so they are not mammals. They are not really fish, no? There's
Sharks are fish.
Sharks are fish. Okay.
Yeah, so sharks are definitely fish. And really, when we look back in evolutionary time, sharks and they're chondrichthyans, which means they're cartilaginous fishes, and their origins start around 450-ish million years ago. And that's when we saw the rise of the first jawed vertebrates, and that includes the sharks. And so, and we know all of this history through the fossil record. And so sharks' teeth and sometimes their vertebrae fossilized to give us clues as to what some of those sharks might have looked like. And put into context that these sharks have lived through 5 mass extinction events on our planet, all of them. And so the sharks have been here. And so that story of the shark is one of survival, re-radiation, survival through all of these cataclysmic Earth events.
That sounds fascinating. I need to get through my true or false questions, but because I feel like we could almost start the conversation from here already. We're coming back to this. I want to stay with giving birth in sharks because I heard that there's a species of shark where it's really survival of the fittest, where already in the egg or in the womb, there's multiple baby sharks and they eat each other as long as there's only one left. So they feed off each other until they are alive.
Yes.
It sounds like a horror movie.
Yeah, it's an evolutionary strategy to help those embryos survive to be as large and successful as they can be when they leave the mom. And so it's called intrauterine cannibalism. There's another term, Adelphophagy, which means eating your brother or sibling. And again, it sounds horrible, but really at the end of the day, it's nature's way to ensure that the pup that does make it out, pup meaning shark baby, that makes it out has the best opportunity to survive. And so that early competition starts in mom's uterus, which is pretty unbelievable.
That's crazy. So baby sharks are called pups?
Yes, they are.
Like with the dog? Well, I think that's... this is what the PR department of sharks should know.
Yes, agreed.
Now it gets a bit more crude. The shark is alive, and this comes more from the human fear. If a shark attacks you, I heard that the best way to defend yourself is to punch them in the nose.
Yeah, the reason that has been sort of the last thing that you would do if you were, in a situation where a shark was coming at you, which again is very rare, but if it were, the reason why that's an important thing to do is because sharks' snouts are full of what are called electro-sensors. And so they have these jelly-filled canals in their snouts that are very sensitive to weak electric fields. And so if you punched them in the nose, it's a very sensitive spot. And it's believed that that will deter the sharks from further engagement.
Okay, yeah, better not try that. But and then one that I heard in Hawaii, I was supposed to go on a dive trip between two islands, actually with hammerhead sharks. And I know that this is your territory. And I remember someone saying, and I didn't double check that before, that hammerhead sharks are supposed to be the most aggressive or the most dumb sharks. That was what I was told back then.
No, that would be wrong. Nope, incorrect.
Okay.
So hammerheads are likely one of the smartest of the shark species. And there is a scientist, a colleague of mine, who studies shark brains. And the regions in shark brains can be associated with different tasks, vision, smell, the sense of smell, all of these different things. And in hammerheads, parts of the brain are larger than others, and that may correlate to behaviors. And in hammerheads, in scalloped hammerheads in particular, we see schooling, we see nonverbal communications, and we see a social hierarchy in these animals. And so they are definitely sophisticated, and I would argue that the only limitation there is our understanding of the way that they interact with each other and their communication strategy. And they are also not aggressive. Sharks, hammerheads are actually, in many cases, there are many different hammerhead species, which again, something maybe not a lot of people know. And in those multiple species, there's not only a gradation of the size of their heads and how far wide they are, but also in total body size of the sharks. So great hammerheads can get quite large. And then there are other species that perhaps only get around 3 feet long. So there's a difference in head shape, body length, and their disposition, though, typically is quite passive, and they're very shy. They don't really want to be around people, to be honest. It's a privilege to be able to swim next to a hammerhead.
Yeah, that's also what someone once told me, but more for the reef sharks or cat sharks or something like that, I think they're called. It's a bit like they do behave like cats. They won't attack you if you don't bother them. Maybe they will come up to you if they're curious, and then you can let it happen, but never touch them. Never anger them almost.
Yeah.
That brings me to the last point, is that basically without sharks, we cannot have healthy oceans or healthy reef ecosystems.
Yeah, that's true. And, we often, because we live on land, we often think of a lot of our managed systems on land. When predators are removed from those systems, we see the consequences. And many times those consequences are not good for the entire ecosystem. The dynamics there change when predators are removed. And it's no different in the aquatic realm. And so when predators like sharks are removed from systems, we see a loss of biodiversity. We sometimes see shifts in the density and abundance of other species that come in with that void. And sometimes that trips up what we call a cascade of events with other species that can be a negative for the total ecosystem health. And so having sharks in our ocean is really critical, and it does help us have a healthy functioning system, which in the end is good for us humans.
Yeah. Then I want to ask one question, but we only give the answer at the very end of the conversation to keep a bit of tension. I'm a surfer, and I always wondered if I ever encounter a shark. I think there's probably multiple sharks that have seen me already, but I haven't seen one in the lineup, how to behave. And I think I would like to wait with that answer until the end of the episode. Fantastic.
True or false?
Now getting into the initial topic that I mentioned, it feels like a lot of predators out there, like the apex predators, have a different standing with humans. And in the end, it doesn't really matter, or it does matter what humans think about these predators, because we are often also their biggest threat. I think it's clear that this is the case with sharks. Humans kill way too many sharks for food, for pleasure, for whatever reasons. In public perception, tigers, lions, they have something mighty, and whereas with sharks, they trigger so many of our fears. And this is exactly what I want to talk about. Like, what fascinates you so much about sharks that you dedicated your career to these animals?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I can give you an answer that it started for me in a kind of a silly way. I saw the movie Jaws as a young girl, and I walked out of the movie theater forever changed. I was absolutely terrified of sharks after that movie, and I literally thought they were under the kitchen table and under my bed. And I tried out for the swim team, and I made it because I was swimming from sharks coming out of the drain. So I really had a shark problem. And lucky enough for me, my parents had a animal encyclopedia that had a whole section on sharks. And it was there in those pages that I read about sharks, and I learned their true history. And I have been fascinated ever since. And I think what has happened is Jaws and the associated filmmaking and series and TV shows and social media as well, sometimes demonize sharks and they amp up the fear. And I think what that has done for 50 years, Jaws is 50 years old now, is it has broken our connection to sharks through fear. But I think it's also broken our connection to the water. People like me were afraid to go into a pool, let alone the ocean. And so when we break the connection that we have with water, it's profound. All life evolved in the ocean. So we have a direct ancestral connection to water. And the neurobiology behind our connection to water tells us that when we are on, near, or around water, we're calmer and we are more deeply connected and at peace. And so when we break this connection to the water by not wanting to be in it or around it because of this fear, it negatively influences us. And I think there has been a bias that we have as humans. We know more about the surface of Mars than we do our own deep ocean. And so that bias extends to the way that we view the ocean and the way that we treat the wildlife in it. And it's my hope that as people begin to discover more about wildlife in the ocean, and we have more cameras underwater telling the stories, people will begin to replace that fear with fascination. And that fascination can then lead to conservation.
Yeah, I think one book that really sparked my fascination even more is How to Speak Whale, where a lot of, I'm not sure if you read that, but where a lot of the new and upcoming technology and also how to decipher whale speak or whale songs basically is being done. Fascinating book, can highly recommend. And with whales, again, coming back to the human, I know that this is almost a no-go in biology, this anthropocentric behavior that the human is the most important thing and we try to understand and see everything through the human eyes. Whales are somewhat social animals, right? And this gives us a deep connection and we see these images and everybody loves whales. Whereas sharks in society, we have Shark Tank, we talk about loan sharks. It's always kind of a negative connotation and it's always this ego, or we associate them to be egomanic almost and greedy and mean. Now you said that, for example, hammerhead sharks can be quite social, I think. Is it true that all sharks are lone wolves of the ocean, or?
No, definitely not lone wolves. And so there are many species that exhibit this social behavior. Absolutely, they do. And I would get back to one really interesting point that you made about whales. You talked about how everyone loves whales, and that they sing songs, and it resonates with us. They're mammals, after all. And so there's a deep connection we have, but it wasn't always that way. And if you think back in time, we killed whales writ large for a lot of the products. And I would have everyone take a pause and think about the fact that that wasn't until that long ago we were commercially whaling whales. And one of the things that changed that, and this is, I think, a really inspiring story, is one person went out and did recordings of whale songs, and that made it onto records back in the day, and people heard the sounds. And that changed that mantra of a monster, a leviathan, a terrifying Moby Dick monster, into something that sang songs and had calves, their babies, and sang songs across entire ocean basins. And suddenly, the killing was put into question, and a global rise of people's voices said it's not okay. And that changed everything for whales and that conservation movement. And I feel like that can happen again, but it does take time. And it takes, I think, the fear away from an animal to understand its role and its place. And that's exactly where my jam is for sharks.
Do you think there's something equivalent to the whale song where you say, it's like, this is so crazy about sharks? Something about how they communicate, something about their behavior, where you would say?
I think so. I mean, I spend a lot of time talking about the vast diversity of sharks. People don't know the true story of sharks. Over 530 living species, all adapted for their own environments. And, evolution has produced incredible adaptations in the sharks. From sharks that can walk on land, literally we have land sharks, to sharks that glow in the dark, to sharks that are nearly 60 feet long swimming in the ocean today, are whale sharks. Sharks have a tremendous story, and that's, I think, what's missing in so much of the material that makes it out to the public, is they hear about one shark or two sharks, but they don't hear about the great stories, the weird, wonderful, bizarre sharks that are out there. And I think that, for me, that's, I think, the hook that will save sharks, is to get people to understand they're not just great white sharks. There's so much more if you peel back the layers and understand not only that they've survived as long as they have, dodged so many extinction events, but that they're still here in such diversity. And that's the story. That's where I hope people will fall in love and help save them.
They've basically seen how the planet evolved, developed, and probably still have that somewhere in the DNA.
Yeah, I mean, they're older than the rings of Saturn. They're older than trees. They have locked inside of them a deep history that, it's truly remarkable.
So the true historians of the planet. Now, you focus specifically on hammerheads, if I'm not completely wrong.
Yeah, no, that was the work that I did for my PhD. Started my actually my master's. I was working on hammerheads, but yeah, it's a specialty I have, and one of the big questions that I had has been argued in the literature for a very long time. Why do hammerheads have the weird head shape? What does that do for them? Is it good? Is it bad? Does it not matter? Why would it persist? What does it do? And so that was the question I was able to ask with my advisor. And what an amazing journey that was, to go all over the world to study different hammerhead species and to try to determine what might be the evolutionary adaptations that drove this head shape. And the answer is there's probably a lot of things. But the sensory system is what we really dove into most deeply, because if you think about it, the hammerhead's head is so wide, its eyes are set far apart, its nasal system, its sense of smell is spread out. The sharks have the ability to detect weak electric fields. That's spread out over the head, sort of like a big metal detector. So everything in that head has shifted and changed. And the questions that we can ask as biologists, what that has done for them, that was really the focus. And what we found is that they do have advantages in their visual system, likely advantages in their electrosensory system, and for sure advantages in their olfactory system, because it's just so big. And that probably drove perhaps maybe not the very first hammerhead, which may have been a mutation, and that animal's skull, the chondrocranium it's called, expanded, but somehow it persisted because it wasn't selected against. That animal survived and speciated out all of the hammerheads we see today, which all have their own distributions and, again, their own body lengths and head expansion rates. It's fascinating. So Hammerhead's story is a really interesting one, and they are one of the most recent evolved sharks in the ocean. And again, I would argue that their cognitive abilities are probably far greater than what we know.
Mm. Can we stay on this electric field a little bit? How does that help the sharks? Because I think they have quite bad eyesight, if I'm not wrong.
No, that's another misnomer. Huh. So sharks actually have fantastically well-developed eyes that rival our eyes in complexity and function. And so this is something that is, not really well understood out there in the public. Sharks' eyes have mobile pupils. That means they can control the amount of light that comes into the eye. And then, we also have sharks that live in the deep ocean where light is limited, and they have developed adaptations like a tapetum lucidum, which allows them to maximize the amount of photons coming into the eye. So they have all of these adaptations in their eyes to maximize everything, their visual fields, how much they can see, and how fast their eyes work. And some sharks actually superheat their eyes so that they are working at maximum speed to resolve the image of animals they may be chasing. So shark eyes are far from primitive, but they work in combination, of course, with all the other sensory systems, including the electro-sense. And so electrosensory systems are based in the head, and they have these jelly-filled canals called the ampullae of Lorenzini, and they allow the shark to literally detect weak electric fields. And the weak electric fields are coming off of other animals' heartbeat, gill movements, all of that sends out a signal, and sharks evolved to detect it. So there's no hiding from the shark. They can find you. And you can hide under the sand. You can be in pitch black. They will detect you with this system. It's a very short range sense. This is not miles. This is not far. This is a very close range sense. And in fact, I'll take you on an interesting thought experiment. Think of hammerheads. They have their eyes straight out and their heads are perhaps 3 feet long. Imagine as their eyes overlap in front, because their eyes are positioned on the ends of the hammers, they have a blind spot. Just like if I put my finger here, I might not be able to see it. Same for the hammerhead, but it extends out up to a meter. And so sharks use that electrosensory system in that visual void. Pretty neat. So electrosensory system working around the head to give them information about where prey is. Remember, sharks don't have hands. They can't grab their food. So they've got to get it into the mouth, and they don't have those hands. And so as they're moving for that last minute bite, they may lose their sight of that animal as it goes into that blind area, but they will be able to get it because of that electrosensory system, the localization of where that is. And the last amazing part to the story is that we think sharks may use their electrosensory system to navigate Earth's magnetic lines.
What does that mean?
That means
why is that important?
Sharks know where they are based on the Earth's magnetic lines, the magnetic field. So just as turtles or birds utilize these cues, we believe sharks can use their electrosensory system in some form of navigation. And this is one of the things that's not fully understood yet. We're still researching it, trying to understand it, but we know that animals like hammerheads are following seamounts. They're following lines that are like super highways under the water. And we think that they're able to do that because they know where they are. With respect to the continents, to perhaps seamounts, to these islands, these oceanic islands in the middle of nowhere, they'll pop up there, and they're the same individuals that keep coming back. So there is this ability for them to go to these different places, and we're just getting our arms around it because, again, cheap technology like cameras, like GoPros, more people under this water than ever before. And this is the opportunity. We can start putting those puzzle pieces together to try to figure out what's going on. We still just don't know.
Is there a hypothesis on why evolutionary that makes sense to have that navigational system?
Well, for sure. Another really unresolved part of of our understanding is how do they find each other underwater to mate? Sometimes hammerheads sexually segregate. That means males and females might not be together all year round, but they certainly get together during mating periods. How do they find each other? Is it chemical? How do they know where to go? They don't have cell phones. What do they do? How do they figure it out? So that's another really interesting question. And again, it boils down to trying to understand their basic biology, their physiology. And again, how does the electrosensory system, their lateral line, how do all of these things work together in combination to help these animals find each other? And it's different likely in species. So some may rely on the electrosensory system more than others. Some may be more visual. So again, the story of the shark truly is the story of tremendous diversity.
This is really, really fascinating. I did not expect that. Because it's basically we're discovering a new sense almost, right? Because if we think about bats who have this ultrasound to scan their surrounding, you could imagine it's like, well, they can just hear incredibly well. Now this electro sense is like from a science fiction book almost. And you said this is close range, and by close range you mean like 1 to 3 foot, or?
Yeah, we don't. I've done experiments with sharks to where basically we flipped a switch in the water to generate a prey simulating electric field, and what you see is pretty neat. You'll see the sharks go over that and suddenly make a behavioral turn to go in, and they will be biting at the electricity or the weak electric field we've generated in the water. So they think there's something there, a crab. Their body is telling them, "Whoa, there's something here." It's a phantom that we've generated, but you can see where they turned and how far away they are, and that's how we measure the distance, and that's how we know that this is a close range sense. So we're talking probably anywhere from 30 centimeters to 60 centimeters. So really, not far. But that's what allows them, again, to cue into that. And that matters when they're looking for buried prey, or perhaps when a fish comes into that blind area, how do they get that right into the mouth, as these fish are trying to get away? Think about that. You want to be able to know where it is. So it's a fantastic sense. It's shared with platypus. Imagine that. So, it's just another advantage that sharks have as being these ancient creatures in their toolbox that we humans don't have. We don't have that, but they do. How neat that they have these different ways to see their world.
Before we started a different myth, you said if you clicked a switch underwater and they reacted to it. If I ever go diving with a shark, should I better keep my hands off the GoPro then?
Funny enough, I use GoPros underwater a lot, and I've had sharks come at them because they do send out that electric signal. And during my experiments, I had cameras on top that were filming from on top so that we could see and measure how far away the sharks were. And I've had sharks come up and attack the camera. So you betcha they can detect it. And in fact, a whole new line of research for conservation has been, how do we use the secret communication channel with sharks to help keep them off of lines that bring in sharks that no one wants, perhaps a tuna fishery where they don't want sharks on the line? How do we use that system to keep sharks away? Is there a way? And at a certain voltage, the sharks are not attracted. They're actually potentially repelled. And that is a really neat place to think about how we can keep sharks at bay, keep them off lines if we don't want them as bycatch. As we know, bycatch is really terrible for our ocean and for our food consumption. And so if we can keep those sharks off the lines and keep these fishermen from having to deal with the sharks on the lines, it's a win for everybody. So that really is a fantastic place to watch and see where that goes, because there's a lot of people working on that. And I think there's a lot that's going to happen in that space.
I mean, there would be one of those things, right, where you can suddenly start communicating with them, almost like which people try talking to whales. So that's super fascinating. And better not go diving with a heartbeat, it's kind of electric things. Yeah, exactly, a pacemaker. So.
Pacemaker, yeah. Well, I don't know about that. It's funny. I think you don't want people to be afraid, and we don't know, exactly how people how sharks respond to people and sort of the vibe that you give off. I don't know if there's anything there, but certainly I have seen sharks, same species, behave very differently. And I think, and I'm not saying sharks have personalities, but I would say you can see ones that are shyer and more aggressive than others, more that are more inquisitive and curious, and ones that are I just want to get away from you. I don't know what you are and I don't like you. So it's funny to see differences just within a species, let alone among species. We see tremendous differences. Some are shy, some are curious, some want to know what's going on. Some are, you can hardly ever see them because they see you way before you ever see them.
No. And last question on that sense, is there research on whether specific prey gives off a certain electric signal?
Yes, absolutely.
follow-up question, are there animals that figured this out evolutionary that would be theoretically on the menu, but managed to change their electrostatic field?
That's a really great question. And one thing I do know about that is that there are sharks and skates that are in egg cases that are in the environment. And it's believed that they, inside the egg, can detect electric fields of potential predators, and they will stop moving. A freeze response to a potential predator inside an egg. What does that mean? I don't know. It just means it's a survival mechanism. Could other prey items try to conceal their electric signal? I don't know the answer to that. It's a fantastic question to try to mask. But, as you know, everything is sort of an evolutionary arms race, isn't it? So certainly there probably is something. I'm just not aware of it. But yeah, it's a great thought.
So we talked about vision. By the way, the pupil of the human eye, is it mobile? It is mobile as well, right? We change the lens.
Yeah.
So it's similar to...
It is. So sharks' eyes have mobile pupils. They also have a variety of pupil shapes, pinholes, crescents, all kinds of different shapes that allow them to dilate down to a certain size. And for instance, that may allow them to have a horizontal visual field maintained. They can also have a retinal rich streak in their eye that allows them to have great resolution on the vertical plane if they happen to be a shark that cruises on the sand and is always looking at that one dimension there. So again, the more you study, the more you learn, the more you understand. And, rods and cones are present in shark retinas, and that is a duplex retina, it's called. And so does that mean that they can resolve color? That's another hotly debated topic. Some sharks may have the hardware for contrast, but can they resolve color? These are questions that are still fundamentally being explored in just a handful of species. Yet again, there's 530 sharks. So when we say these blanket statements about sharks in general, it's a little dangerous because there are so many species that have such different habitats. We're not sure. We do know that some rays can see in color. They're not colorblind. So again, how adaptive, how much help does it give an animal to have color resolution? It's expensive. And if, in biological
energy.
So if you don't use that, you're going to lose that over time. That's what we see. So if it's adaptive and helpful, it'll be retained. And if it isn't, it'll be lost.
Interesting. So we talked about vision. We talked about electromagnetic. Another thing that people say is sharks can smell a drop of blood miles away. That will bring us to smell. Do they smell?
Yeah. So the olfactory system is what it's called, and a colleague of mine, she's amazing and has studied and is studying the shark the olfactory system. And here's how it works. It's really interesting. So you and I have a nasal system that goes all the way into our lungs. The way that sharks' nasal cavities work is water flows over it and it goes straight over their nasal cavity and goes right back out. And so as we extract molecules for smell, like if you brought in fresh baked cookies, I would be like, "Ooh, I can smell that." Well, sharks have a similar thing. They are binding molecules to the inside of their nasal cavity, and that's called the parts of that are called the olfactory rosettes. And it's really interesting. They look like stacked paper plates, and they go all the way into the nasal cavity, and they bind odor molecules. And so sharks that have really large, they're called olfactory rosettes, may have an advantage because it's just surface area. And so hammerheads' olfactory rosettes can be this big. It's incredible. And if you look at a normal shark, much smaller because the heads are smaller. So this woman that did this research was doing what are called electro-olfactograms. So she would have a shark in a tank, and she would put different odors through the shark's nose and record their responses. So guess what? She did fish blood, got a really big response, really big signal. And then she did the ultimate. She took one for the team and took her own blood and ran that through the shark system. And guess what? Very minimal response. Why? Because sharks don't care about people. They don't eat us. We're not in the same group. We're not ocean animals. We're not on the menu. They don't care. So it's a fascinating study to understand what they're cued in for. And it's like a key and lock mechanism. There's predator-prey. We're not in that system. And so we don't really register. Yes, there are human attacks. Yes, we can talk about that. But those are typically mistakes that sharks make. And they don't really want us. Yes, sometimes people are consumed. It is not unheard of, but it is rare. Sharks go after their preferred prey, and every shark has a preferred diet. Some are generalists, some are specialists. So again, it's sort of that lock and key mechanism of dietary preferences. And humans, we're just not really on that menu.
That's good news. And another myth busted. Very happy about that. Which will bring me to the last sense. I'm not sure if they have touch, but as you mentioned, they don't have hands. But the last one would be taste, because this is where I would then want to go, because I think there's no stories of a human ever completely eaten by a shark, because apparently they don't like the taste of us. And at this point, I also want to mention, I never tried it, but I heard shark tastes horrible. So if you ever get curious, don't even try. Leave them alone. Don't do it. But I heard sharks don't like people, as you just mentioned. We're not on the menu for them. Interesting.
Yeah. Yes, couple of thoughts there. Yes, really the most dangerous shark to people are great whites, because they're ambush predators and they attack from below with the element of surprise. And imagine if you're a large great white shark who's survived the gauntlet to make it into an adulthood. They will come up to a large seal and they will take one large bite and then they will go away. And they are waiting for that animal to bleed out so that they can go back and feed on that animal without any injury. Recall, a seal will fight back, could take out an eye, could take out your gills. If you're a shark, it's dangerous. You're fighting back, prey. And so that method of bite and go away is a way to ensure the safety of the shark and its survival. And when a shark may misinterpret a person who is on a surfboard with a black wetsuit who does a great job of looking like a seal, that attack is an exploratory bite meant to take out that animal, and then they go away. And that person, unfortunately, because we're small, that could be a fatal bite. And so that's typically what we see. It's unfortunate that does sometimes happen. But again, the statistics from this International Shark Attack file, which have been tracking human and shark interactions for over 400 years, the data is there. And the data says that 2 to 3 to 4 fatal shark attacks per year globally. That's it.
Nothing.
I wish it was 0, but it's not. But put it into context. Dogs, vending machines, people on the New York subway are more dangerous. So we just have to manage the reality versus the fear mongering and the myths that we love to perpetuate and scare ourselves.
Probably every other apex predator that we put on a godlike position, like a tiger, like a lion or whatever, probably kills more people a year than the shark. You just said or it sounded like it's quite difficult for a great white to actually become an adult shark.
Well, think about it. I mean, they've got to they're born alive, and they're around 4 to 5 feet as pups. And great whites are thought to live around 70 years. They start reproducing in their 30s, and they've got to make a living. And what's fascinating is their teeth shape, the dentition changes over their lifetime. So as youngsters, their teeth are dagger-like to allow them to capture and process fish. And then as they get larger into adulthood, they shift into triangular and serrated teeth that allow them to rip and tear the seals. And so to make it through all those stages, to make it from not being eaten, caught by a fisherman, all of the things that they go through, it's hard. To be a predator. And so to see some of these animals that are 20 feet, approaching 20 feet long, they are true survivors of a system stacked against them. And it gives me great awe. I do a lot of baited remote underwater video deployments where I deploy bait and cameras all around Nova Scotia, the Northeast Atlantic, and I see white sharks, and I know how hard it is for them to make a living, and I have a lot of reverence for them. I really do. It's a tough life.
That's an interesting perspective, because from everything we just discussed, in my mind, I was just playing through, it's like, okay, they had hundreds of millions of years of evolution behind them. This is why they have such crazy senses. This is why they are at the very top of the food pyramid, by the way, I think, which they are not, at least not in the ocean, which is another topic. I heard that there's no more white sharks left in a lot of parts of South Africa because orcas like their liver. And
yeah. I had an opportunity to work with collaborators down in South Africa on that very question. So, it's an interesting economic story because South Africa has been known as a white shark diving mecca. And for decades and decades, people have been going and spending great money to go see white sharks in cages and cage dive with them regularly and successfully. And so recently, 2 orca came in. They have names, Port and Starboard, and they came in and they had a taste for white sharks, and they have been hunting white sharks and removing their livers, and the bodies of the white sharks started washing up on shore, and the biologists started to try to understand and unravel what was happening. And so my team went and worked with the biologists that were working on that study, and we were able to satellite tag great whites to try to understand where they're going, because they're abandoning their typical sites just east of Cape Town in Hansby and Stroosby, and trying to understand where are they going. And sometimes we see them return, and my colleagues just tagged another 6 white sharks, and they're trying to understand where they're going. But it's a mystery, and it just illustrates to us that, systems change, animals move, and not everything stays the same forever. And if you look at your history, one of the things to remember is sharks used to be in parallel with Dunkleosteus, placoderms, big, huge, bony fishes that were just incredibly voracious, and that set off that arms race. And some of these races produced things like Megalodon, the largest predatory shark to ever swim in the ocean, ever. And that animal didn't survive. Why? Because conditions changed. And so that's really another story, that sharks adapt, they decline, they re-radiate, they decline, and then they come back. And they come back different, and they come back adapted to the conditions in which they are in present. And that's fantastic. And the story of the orca is really no different. It's simply another iteration of change.
And I just wonder what will happen to their biggest predator, us humans, in all of that. Maybe that's where they start to walk, come after us on land.
It's a very
with eternal wisdom.
Yeah.
It's crazy. I can truly say that you sparked my curiosity in sharks so much, and we only touched briefly on the hammerhead, where you mentioned there's multiple different species of hammerheads. We didn't go into the glowing sharks, into the walking sharks, into these sharks that live in the deep sea. Um, there's still so much more to unravel, but I want to be mindful of your time as well, and also give you the opportunity to maybe say 2, 3 things about the Ocean First Institute. What is it that you're working on today? Where can people follow your work? Where, if somebody is also equally inspired now to learn more, what's the best way?
Yeah, thank you. So we are on Instagram. Oceanfirstinstitute.org is our website. And we're also on Facebook for anybody that's there. And really, the mission is ocean conservation through research and education. And so we are really working hard to do critical research on sharks to try to understand where they go, how they go, why they go, and how to protect them. 30% of sharks are critically endangered, so they're endangered with extinction. Another 30% of sharks are data deficient. That means we don't have enough information to even classify them on the spectrum. And so there's a lot of work that needs to be done to try to understand sharks, and really in an effort and a scaffold to try to save them. And part of that work is the science, but part of that work is bridging to education and to tell the stories that help people connect to sharks and to see them in a different light. And so our organization is all about that research, but it's also about education and engagement. Taking people on expedition with us into the field to lean into the wonder, that's what we do. So if you're interested in what we do, check us out. You can contact us anytime. We're a nonprofit organization, so if you feel compelled, you can even donate or volunteer.
Yeah. You're also part of the Explorers Club. How's that?
Yes, I am. I am. It's an amazing organization. They're based out of New York, and they have incredible members. And, for me, it's been an extraordinary opportunity to walk among some of these incredible people and really to carry the torch for sharks and to share their story. It's been just extraordinary. And I'm in the Women Divers Hall of Fame, another amazing opportunity for me to talk about the importance of diving. I think of diving as the passport into the universe that we work, and it's the world's last great wilderness. And so to be a diver is really, I think, vital to understand and to see firsthand this incredible world. We live on a water planet. We should be in it.
Definitely. All right, then to come back to that initial question, if I ever encounter a shark while swimming, while surfing, while whatever, what increases my chances that it's a positive encounter?
I think remain calm. And I would encourage you to look at an Instagram feed of Malibu Artist. Malibu Artist does drone footage of white sharks in California, and there are so many sequences of people that are on surfboards out in the water, and white sharks are all over. And white sharks don't hurt people; they just keep swimming by. And I think that's the big lesson here, is that sharks have been here all along, and when we're out in the water, they're there, and we don't even realize it. And so I think go out, enjoy the water, enjoy surfing, and, bond with the water. That's really the story. Sharks aren't there to go after you. And I think if you watch Malibu Artist, you'll see what I mean.
Fantastic. Mikki, I think you should be the head of PR for all the sharks out there. You convinced me.
Thank you.
I hope you convince a lot more people. Thank you so much for your time today. And I think we need to do a second edition at some point when I know a bit more about sharks.
Sounds great. I'm in.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thanks.
Where the ocean meets